Good morning, Wright State University, and welcome to the Wright Morning Show on WWSU. Start your day the right way with us. We will be covering current events in the news, local, national, and from Wright State. We will provide a daily dose of inspiration and positivity to lighten your day. And we will have a special feature depending on the day of the week. So grab your tea or your coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the Wright Morning Show.
For those of you who are on YouTube right now could see me in my monk costume. Pie su domine dona is requiem.
Smack.
I don't have a wooden plank today, unfortunately, to do that. Welcome to the Wright Morning Show. It is Thursday, October 28, 2021. I'm in costume today because I am promoting the Halloween Bash, which is coming up on Saturday from 6 p.m. to 1 a.m. at Wright State University. With us this morning, we have Laughing Chipmunk on Discord. How are you doing this morning?
Well, other than my back hurting me like it does every single morning, just about, I'm doing okay.
Oh, that's not good to hear with regards to your back pain, but good to hear that you're hanging in there.
Oh yeah, I'm getting used to this. It's part of getting old.
Yeah, unfortunately. All right, well, let's get into your current events, shall we? Let's talk about the 2021 election, the race for the new Dayton mayor. And this comes from WHIO. Next Tuesday's race for Dayton mayor features a well-known current city commissioner and a former Dayton firefighter who is making his first run for elected office. Commissioner Jeff Mims is a former member of the Dayton School Board, former school administrator, former Dayton Education Association leader, teacher, and coach. He faces Renz Boers, a retired firefighter in Dayton. In an interview with both candidates for Sunday's WHIO Reports program, Boers says his top priority is focusing more of the city's safety and development efforts in troubled neighborhoods. These abandoned houses have got to be our top priority. They blight entire neighborhoods. They bring trafficking, drug addicts, and they ultimately bring the coroner who brings dead bodies out of these homes, Boers said. Mimi said as a current city commissioner and before that as a member of the Dayton School Board, he has been focused on neighborhoods for a long time. From a $528 million project to build new schools at Dayton, additional libraries, the Gem City Market, you name it, we've had a continuous set of growth factors, Mims said. You can read more about these candidates by going to WHIO.com. And remember to vote this coming Tuesday in the primaries. From WDTN, Dayton drummer's home is Mini Kiss Museum. A major Kiss fan didn't let the band's recent concert cancellation at the Nutter Center get him down. He turned parts of his home into a mini Kiss museum to pay tribute to the rock band. Mark Lang's dining room is his drumming room, and his upstairs spare bedroom is a personal museum for Kiss memorabilia. I've always been creative. I've always been interested in the arts, and this is just something. They're like, yeah, that's Mark, he said. Lang's love for Kiss started when he was 7. My brother brought home the Kiss album, and I loved the music, says Lang. Now, over 50, he loves the band just as much as he did then, saying he's a Kiss kid at heart. Lang has seen the band a number of times in concert and has had 3 meet and greets with them. For most concerts, he shows up in full costume and makeup. I went to the Nutter Center in 2000. I was actually invited to come up to the second row because I was in full costume. That was pretty cool, Lang said. They did a special on VH1, so they wanted to get different shots of the audience. You can
That's
read,
pretty cool.
you can read more about his little museum at WDTN.com. Dayton Daily News has an article about 2 people being detained after a fire set in Dayton Canoe Club. So be sure to check
Oh,
that out. Somebody set fire to the Dayton Canoe Club, apparently.
oh my God.
Yeah, I knew what you were trying to say, but this is radio.
Yeah.
Also, Dayton Daily News has an article about the college enrollment drop in the U.S. being the largest 2-year decline in 50 years. We talked about that yesterday when Jamie from the Guardian Media Group was on the show. From Dayton.com, Best of Dayton. Who has the best breakfast? Here are the finalists. About halfway through voting in Best of Dayton, people have plenty to say about their favorite breakfast spot. The Best Breakfast contest is one of our hottest, a group that includes Best Donuts, Best Pizza, and Best Ice Cream. The finalists are... Oh, this isn't any surprise to us, Laughing Chipmunk. Guess what one of the places are who made the finalists.
Yeah.
Guess one of the places that made the finalists for Best Breakfast places.
I really have no idea.
The Blueberry Cafe.
Woo! Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, they're a finalist along with First Watch and Tank's Bar and Grill. Which one is the best? You can cast your vote once per day per contest up until, I believe, November 18th, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, be sure to vote.
Cool.
All right, Dayton Daily News has new details about the Kettering Defense Contracting Businesses. Dayton Defense Contracting Business is looking to expand and double the number of jobs that they have. So you can check that out at Dayton Daily News. Dayton Business Journal has an article about CareSource and Excella Technologies forming business partnership. Dayton Daily News talks about election advocates criticizing a law banning voter registration partnerships. And they also have an article about DDC management planning nearly 300 new homes in Huber Heights. From WHIO, one shot and was transported to the Dayton hospital. Suspect is still at large. Police are on scene where a person was shot outside of a Jefferson Township business. According to regional dispatch records, a 911 caller reported a person came into a business on the 5300 block of West 3rd Street with a gunshot wound around 8:35 p.m. Initial investigations revealed an altercation between 2 people, which happened inside the Vibes Lounge and Grill. The altercation continued out into the parking lot, and that's when one subject pulled out a firearm and shot the other in a right leg, according to a press release. The suspect who shot the man then fled the area before police arrived. Dispatcher said the person was transported to Miami Valley. The shooting victim injury is non-life-threatening. At the time of the reporting, police say the suspect is currently at large. Montgomery County Sheriff's Office says the incident remains under investigation. From Xenia Gazette, the Xenia School Board race is crowded. 7 candidates are competing for 3 seats on Xenia Community Schools Board of Education. Incumbents Cheryl Marcus and Mary Adeline Lewis are joined on the ballot by Joshua Day, Mary M. Gretsch, Heather Lee, George W. Leitenheimer, and Michael Leopold. Marcus is running for a 3rd term and began serving in 2014. I like serving my community, and I believe I can make a difference in the education of our children, she said. Understanding the mask policy that we have right now is a challenge. I do believe what surfaced is there are some individuals that understand why we mask and some who don't see the need. We have to input strategies that keep children safe. Marcus said she isn't sure the community clearly understands the district's curriculum and topics like critical race theory. It's not something that is taught in K-12 curriculum. If we could share what curriculum entails, that could dispel the myths. The district, according to her, needs to improve academic achievement. You can read more at xeniagazette.com. Dayton Business Journal says that Dayton ranks number 62 in U.S. News' best places to retire. Dayton.com, holiday countdown. Downtown Dayton holiday tree is to arrive at the courthouse square. The days are getting shorter and the air is getting crisper, signaling that it's time for downtown Dayton to be adorned with the perfect tree in preparation for the holiday season. Donated by Dayton resident Marcia Gebhardt from her property, the tree, chosen to star as the Dayton Holiday Festival tree, will be arriving at Courthouse Square, 2700 Theodore Avenue, Dayton, on Wednesday, November 10th. The tree is set to arrive at Courthouse Square around noon. The Dayton Holiday Festival Committee began its search back in August for the tree that will be the centerpiece of the Courthouse Square this holiday. The selected tree will be decorated with more than 50,000 lights during the holiday season. It's a lot of lights.
50,000?
Yeah. That is a big tree.
That's a lot of lights. That's a lot of light bulbs to replace when they burn out.
Well, hopefully they use LED bulbs so that they don't really have to worry about that.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
From WDTN, Kettering Health Festival is bringing family fun. Kettering Partners for Healthy Youth will be hosting a festival on Wednesday, October 27th from 5 to 7 p.m. They did host a festival. That was in the past. According to the festival, this family-friendly event featured dinner and refreshments as well as door prizes and giveaways. From WHIO, Hope Center set to open next month, aiming to reduce poverty in Northwest Dayton. Finishing touches are being completed at the Hope Center, a new community center designed with a goal to reduce poverty in Northwest Dayton. Residents in this portion of the area have seen several businesses leave the area in the last few years. We're interested in building up a community that has experienced so many disappointments over the years, Vanessa Ward, president of the Omega Community Development Corporation, told News Center 7. The Gem City Market that opened up earlier this year provided the first glimmer of hope in the area, helping many families have access to fresh food. But those same families have been left without some essential services, and the Hope Center is hoping to change that. We have many disparities, health disparities in Northwest Dayton, educational disparities, Ward said. We brought together partners who could engage both children and families for the uplift of the community. The $11 million building is located off of Harvard Boulevard and is what Ward considers a two-generational model, meaning there are services not just for kids, but for the entire family. Services for children can be found on the first and second floors, like on the first floor where the mini university provides an early learning program for infants through age 5. The second floor has services from Dayton Children's Hospital with full pediatric services for kids of all ages. Sinclair College also has space in the Hope Center where adults can take classes. You can check more at WHIO.com. From Flyer News, debut book adds new chapter for University of Dayton's Terry Resvey. Terry Resvey, Executive Director of Communication Strategies at the University of Dayton and founder of the Irma Bombeck Writing Workshop, has been a champion of writing for decades. With the publication of her first book, One Heart with Courage, she has recently added book author to her list of career titles. Published in September 2021, One Heart with Courage is a culmination of essays ranging from motherhood to UD memories that Risby has written over the years. After experiencing uncertainties amidst the pandemic, she decided it was time to dust off her notebooks, look through computer files, and take the leap of publication. It's not easy to write a book, but it's like everything else. It's step by step. Proceeds from the book go to the Irma Bombeck Writers Workshop, a nationally recognized biannual writing workshop hosted at the University of Dayton, named in honor of the late humor writer and alumna. After more than 2 decades of working with upcoming writers at the workshop, In more than 3 decades overseeing strategic communications at the University of Dayton, Risby has learned a lot about the writing process and the mental hurdles that writers go through as they hone their craft. You can read more at flyernews.com. Let's check the weather. The current weather at Wright State University, brought to you by Tomorrow.io, is partly cloudy and 50 degrees. The wind is coming from the east-southeast at 10 miles an hour. A little breezy. Got some gusts up to 20 miles per hour. The relative humidity is 90%. The barometer is on a sharp decline, 29.68 inches of mercury. The visibility is 7.7 miles. Got a little fog out there as well this morning, which should clear up momentarily. Here's your 12-hour forecast. Up until 9:30 a.m., we're going to have partly cloudy skies. The clouds are going to roll in after that, and then we're going to start seeing some rain enter the area after 3 p.m. Temperatures are going to reach about 60 degrees at 1:30 p.m. and then peak at 66 degrees at 3 p.m. before we get hit by the rain. And the rain is going to cool the air off a little bit as well. Here is your extended weather forecast brought to you by the National Weather Service at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Today's forecast, mostly cloudy in the morning with a chance of showers in the afternoon, mainly after 4 p.m. High in the lower 60s. Tonight, showers, continuous showers. Low in the mid-50s. Friday, showers pretty much the entire day. High around 60. Friday night, showers likely. Low around 50. Saturday, a chance of showers. High in the upper 50s. Saturday night, a slight chance of showers in the evening. Cloudy overnight. Low in the mid-40s. Sunday, mostly cloudy. High around 60. Sunday night, mostly cloudy. Low in the upper 30s. And finally, Monday, mostly sunny. High in the mid-50s. And now we're going to go to global and national news. First off, from the New York Times, you pay a wealth tax. So the New York Times has an article about the pluses and minuses of a wealth tax. Most Americans pay an annual wealth tax on their largest asset. It's called property tax. Each year, they pay an amount equal to a small percentage of the estimated value of their house, and a house is by far the most valuable item that most families own. The very rich are different. While they pay property taxes too, their homes tend to make up a tiny share of their net worth. The bulk of their assets are not taxed. In the past decades, other taxes like the corporate tax and the estate tax, not state tax, served almost as de facto wealth taxes. But those other taxes have declined, causing the total federal tax rate on the wealthy to plummet. So let's talk about the average tax rates in the U.S. by income group. The bottom 90% of earners pay about 26% in taxes, whereas the top 0.01% of earners pay about 30% in taxes, which is only about a 4% difference between the two groups as of 2019. Now, back in 1960, the bottom 90% of earners paid an average of 24% in taxes, whereas the top 0.01% of earners paid upwards of 60% in taxes. In the same period, wealth inequality has also soared. According to the University of California, Berkeley, the bottom 90% of earners in 2019 make up about 35% of the U.S. population. Wait, hang on. I'm not sure if I'm reading that correctly. See, in the top 0.01 to 10% make up the next 40%, and then the top 0.01% make up 1%? I don't know. That's a little bit of a misleading chart there. Anyway, today, the wealthy both own a much larger share of the country's assets than they once did and pay less tax on each dollar of assets. Okay, so that's the ownership of the country's assets, not the population. This combination creates problems for everybody else. Many Americans own only modest assets, and the federal government struggles to raise enough tax revenue to pay for society's needs like education, healthcare, transportation, scientific research, and the military. This week, Senate Democratic leaders proposed a solution in the form of a new kind of wealth tax. People with at least $1 billion in net worth or $100 million in annual income would be taxed each year on the increase in the value of many of their assets. The fate of this specific tax is uncertain after Senator Joe Manchin expressed skepticism of it yesterday. But wealth taxes, which also featured in the 2020 Democratic presidential campaign, will probably remain part of the political debate in the years ahead, given the country's level of inequality. The New York Times goes on to evaluate the most common objections to wealth taxes. You could read the New York Times morning edition to learn more, but to list them, the number one disagreement, they'll destroy the economy. Number two, they're doomed to fail. Number three, they're unconstitutional. So you can read about these disagreements in the New York Times morning edition. Other headlines in the New York Times for today: Democrats are likely to drop a national paid family leave program from President Biden's spending bill after Manchin opposed it. The U.S. is one of 6 countries without such a program. Lawmakers are trying to rewrite the tax code in days, a process that usually takes months or even years. An inexpensive antidepressant cuts the chance of hospitalization for high-risk COVID patients, a clinical trial found. Iran said it would soon rejoin negotiations on reviving the 2015 nuclear deal. Toni Morrison's beloved has become a flashpoint in the Virginia governor's race. A member of the far-right Oath Keepers militia who was outside the Capitol on January 6th will be on the ballot in New Jersey next week. Nick Kristof, the former Times opinion columnist, is running for governor of Oregon. China tested a hypersonic missile designed to evade U.S. nuclear defenses. General Mark Milley said it was very close to a Sputnik moment. The Taliban have allowed some teenage girls back to school. Many parents are afraid to let their daughters leave home, however. I'm actually doing a project on this in my human rights class about the Taliban and human rights, and a lot of parents are afraid of their daughters getting harassed and even sexually assaulted on the streets. The assistant director of Rust said he didn't fully inspect the gun that killed the cinematographer of Helena Hutchins, according to an affidavit. As parts of America use more clean energy, old utility equipment can't handle the demand. Serenus Hastings founded California's first law school. He also organized massacres of Native Americans. Should the school keep his name? There's a debate about that. Now moving on to Cheddar News and Need to Know. From NBC News, Senate Democrats appear closer to compromise on President Biden's social spending and climate bill, though it is still not a done deal. Momentum appeared to slow after reports that paid family leave and a tax on billionaires have been scrapped in order to satisfy Senator Joe Manchin. President Biden is meeting with all House Democrats this morning to push for a vote on the also stalled infrastructure package, which progressives have said they won't allow until the other bill is ready to go. From ABC News, the White House had hoped that a deal would be done before President Biden leaves today for a series of summits and meetings in Europe. The president's second big foreign trip starts with a visit to the Vatican to see Pope Francis and ends with the COP26 UN Climate Summit in Glasgow. In between, Biden will attend the G20 in Rome, where he will meet face-to-face with French President Macron for the first time since the diplomatic flare-up over submarine sales in Australia. The president trip also means that the annual White House trick-or-treating event will not be happening this year. From the Associated Press, Merck has agreed to let other drug makers produce generic versions of its antiviral COVID pill in a decision that could greatly expand access to the potentially life-changing drug in poor countries where vaccine supply is limited. Molnupiravir is the first pill that has been shown to be effective in treating COVID. It's currently before the FDA, which could approve it for use in the U.S. soon. But rich countries have already brought up most of the initial supply. By granting a royalty-free license, Merck will make it much easier to get manufactured and sold on the cheap around the world. None of the vaccine makers have agreed to a similar deal to license their drugs. From Axios, a top Pentagon official said this week that ISIS-K could be capable of carrying out attacks inside the U.S. within the next year. Colin Kahl, the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, said the Senate that the terror group operating in Afghanistan has the intent to launch attacks outside that country, but not the operational ability to do so just yet. From Cheddar, Rent the Runway got a warm initial reception from investors in its Wall Street debut, opening above the target price before fizzling and ending the first day of trading down 8%. Rent the Runway, trading on the NASDAQ under the ticker RENT, is the latest in a procession of trendy direct-to-customer retailers tapping the public markets. Warby Parker, listed last month in Allbirds, is expected to IPO in the coming weeks. From Fortune, Shiba Inu coin, the meme cryptocurrency of the moment that's based on the mascot of Dogecoin, is now the 9th biggest digital coin by market cap. That makes Shiba Inu not only the more valuable than Doge, but also companies like General Mills and Hewlett-Packard. The price of Shiba Inu is up 100 million% over the last year to an all-time high of about $0.000075. To think that it increased 100 million% and it's still worth $0.000075. That's funny. Individual investors have been petitioning Robinhood to list the meme coin on its trading platform. From CBS Sports, the Astros bounced back to take Game 2 of the World Series, beating the Braves 7-2 in Houston. The series is now tied going into Atlanta for a 3-game stretch starting Friday. The Braves have won 9 straight postseason games at home. From Yahoo Entertainment, investigators have confirmed that a single live bullet fired by Alec Baldwin killed Rust cinematographer Helena Hutchins. According to a newly revealed search warrant, the film's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, told police she checked the antique Colt .45 for hot rounds before it was given to Baldwin. Assistant Director David Halls also admitted he should have checked her work more thoroughly before he handed the gun off to Baldwin, but he didn't. From NPR, the State Department has issued the first American passport with an X as an option for gender. The move is the fulfillment of a promise made by the Biden administration that passports would be more inclusive for people who identify as a gender other than male or female. Passport applicants will also be able to choose M or F without having to provide any kind of medical certification. The first gender-neutral passport was issued to Donna Zizim, a non-binary Colorado military vet who sued the federal government for discrimination when they were denied the opportunity to mark X on their passport. I think it's pronounced Zim. I think that's how you say the last name, or Zyme or something like that. Zzyym. All right, well, that
probably Zyme.
Yeah. That concludes today's current events. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break on the Right Morning Show. When we come back, we're going to get into your daily inspiration. And today we're talking about gaining your sense of control and resilience. So everybody stick around. You're listening to the Right Morning Show on WWSU 106.9.
If you are
Welcome back to the Right Morning Show on WWSU 106.9 FM. We're going to now get into your daily dose of inspiration today, and we are going to be talking about building your sense of control and your resilience. And this comes from tinybuddha.com, written by Joanna Ciolek. But first, here's a quote from Maya Angelou. You may encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated. In fact, it may be necessary to encounter the defeats so you can know who you are, what you can rise from, and how you could still come out of it. When I look back, I am amazed at how differently I dealt with adversity the past few decades of my life. Growing up in a stressful home primed me to experience life with caution. Whether it was being afraid of physical harm, loneliness, or failure, I've lived my life with an exaggerated fight-flight response to everything. Adversity seemed around every corner, and no one was ever there to save me. I developed maladaptive mechanisms to minimize, avoid, or go around the things I was afraid of. I became a quiet and obedient kid to avoid my father's anger. I accepted whatever silver of love my chronically overwhelmed mother was able to give me. I settled for the last pick on the team. I quit after school theater after I was assaulted on the way home one evening. I gave up on art school because my father wanted me to be a teacher. I went to a music school as he wanted and quietly accepted my instructor's abuse. On and on, hurt and disappointment became my constant companions, and I learned to just take it. No one seemed to care that I struggled. No one saw me. And over time, I learned to accept that the world was just cruel and indifferent to my pain. I learned that I have little control over my circumstances. I learned that I can either fight and fail or stay quiet and survive. I learned helplessness. I know now that my childhood wasn't that unique, but for a kid, it was isolating and debilitating. I thought I was the only one who struggled like this. I felt different, alone, and somehow deficient. I developed low self-esteem and anxiety that soon morphed into the chronic feeling of impending doom. I carried that sense of dread and defeat into adulthood. Hypersensitive to stress, I avoided things that would challenge and overwhelm me. I looked to others for permission, approval, and validation. I allowed things without a fight, latched onto any good thing that came my way, and accepted crumbs from others, never daring to stand up for myself and ask for more. They say that what doesn't break you makes you stronger, but for many, those without a healthy foundation, life's big and small traumas build up and eventually show up as anxiety, depression, substance abuse, or PTSD. And I developed most of these. We all respond to adversity differently. Research shows that a loving, emotionally responsive, and supportive environment during childhood fosters psychological resilience throughout life. But even if we didn't get that strong foundation growing up, we can still build resilience now. We can learn to overcome helplessness by increasing our sense of self-control. The most significant practice that allowed me to shift out a state of helplessness and offer me some sense of control was mindfulness. Instead of reliving the past, the pain, resentments, and disappointments, or worrying about the future, I could find peace in the moment, right now. I couldn't change what happened, and I can't control what's to come, but I could decide how I move now. In this very moment, I can control how I respond to life. A deep inhale, noticing my child's smile, the scent of garlic as I cooked dinner. I can focus on here and now, fully absorbing my life through all my senses, knowing that in this moment I am okay. And if I'm feeling stressed or unsettled, I become curious instead of trying to outrun it. I start paying attention to my body, tracking sensations, observing where I'm feeling tightness, consciously releasing the tension as I breathe in and out. This way, I can help regulate my nervous system and shift the patterns of reactivity. I remind myself to breathe as I ride the wave, trusting the discomfort will eventually pass. Once I allowed myself to feel what was going on in my body in times of high stress, I began noticing what I'm thinking and feeling in the midst of turmoil. It can be difficult to not get overwhelmed by the negative thought patterns engraved deeply in our minds, patterns that we've fallen into for decades without much conscious examination. Looking at those now, I realized how detrimental my mental scripts were to my well being. With the help of my journal, I learned to reframe negative events, bring perspective into my experiences, and focus on what I could learn from them. For example, I've carried with me this feeling of failure as a young parent. For those first few years, I was living in a constant state of overwhelm, and there was a lot of guilt for not being good enough of a mom, feeling like a fraud and a failure. When I took a step back, I realized there was a multitude of circumstances going against me that made this part of my life extremely difficult, and I was just doing my best. I had 3 children, super close together, which in itself was a Sisyphean task. I had just moved across the country and had no real friends or family to support me. My husband worked long hours, many weekends, and often out of state. It was a lot to take on, and I was virtually on my own. Looking at this part of my life, I realized I had unrealistic expectations of what it meant to be a good parent. I also realized my perfectionist tendencies and the relentless pressure I put on myself stemmed from my fears of perpetuating generational trauma. This way of thinking wasn't constructive. It was making me miserable. Slowly, I began noticing when these tendencies showed up, and instead of feeding them, I just watched them come and go. Mindfulness allowed me to move through negative thoughts and memories instead of getting stuck in them. I would observe what was going on inside my mind, breathe through the turbulence, offering myself compassion for my struggles, and remind myself that I was doing the best that I can. Over time, I stopped being so hard on myself and eventually shifted out of the habit of ruminating for good. Spending time doing something that I can do well reminds me how it feels to succeed. I have always enjoyed gardening. It was my escape from the hustle and stress of today's fast paced world. My garden is my sanctuary. Watching my garden transform over the decade from a lot of dirt to where it is today, with all the fruit trees, veggie boxes, shrubs, grasses, and blooming annuals, brings me a sense of accomplishment and fulfillment. Finding something you do well and practicing it regularly builds confidence, self esteem, and fortifies a healthy ego. It is imperative to have hobbies that you excel at and can turn to in times of stress or unpredictability. We live in a world of chronic stress and anxiety. We are always plugged in and on the go, constantly planning, thinking, and doing, all the while feeling disconnected from ourselves and the world around us. Modern day life means living in our heads a lot. To counter that, we need a practice that will ground us and bring us back to balance. And nature is one of the most grounding elements that we have. Being in nature downregulates our nervous system and brings about relaxation. Even a short walk can improve our mood and reduce anxiety. Disconnecting from our daily grind this way, all the responsibilities, worries, and electronics, rebalances our body, mind, and soul. Our problems become less significant and impending. we can exhale, if only for now. There are many ways we can ground ourselves in nature this way. Gardening, walking, or even taking care of houseplants can be grounding. I like watering my garden in the evening, repotting plants on Saturdays, and long walks around a lake on Sunday mornings. Find your own natural zen. Soak in nature's energy as often as you can. It is healing. We can't be resilient if we are depleted. When my kids were little, I barely had time and energy for self care. I neglected my needs, whether physical, emotional, or mental, just like I was raised to ignore them growing up. Self neglect is a trauma response, and years went by before I realized I was just perpetuating old wounds. As a result, I felt chronically depleted and anxious. Every little mishap or challenge would stress me out, whether it was a kid's tantrum or packing up for a weekend trip. I was living in a state of chronic overwhelm, emotional dysregulation, and low grade depression. As kids grew older and more independent, my healing turned a corner. I could finally go beyond a basic self care like showers and eating well and focus on truly nourishing my body, mind, and soul. I now prioritize self care like my life depends on it, because it does. Focusing on the basics, I prioritize sleep, movement, and practices that nourish and relax me. Long baths, longer walks, healthier food, reading, gardening, and music. I rely on boundaries to protect my energy and my inner peace. I practice mindfulness and do things with intention. I plan ahead to avoid rushing or multitasking. I fill my own bucket. With so much out of our control, caring for ourselves, body, mind, and heart is the one thing we can do. While challenging times are a given in life and we can't always change our circumstances, we can have a different relationship with what's going on outside of us. We can learn to surf the waves if we stay mindful of practices that strengthen resilience, and that is empowering. And that was written by Joanna Ciolek. Laughing Chipmunk, do you have any thoughts about that article?
Oh, I can relate to the nature thing. That's
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, you got your own little garden over where you are in West Virginia.
Well, I mean, it's not exactly a garden, but if we lived in Britain, it would be a garden because it wouldn't be a yard, it would be a garden. So, that's what I refer it to as. But yeah, I love to just go out and just walk around or sit out there for a little bit and just enjoy the scenery and the birds and the squirrels, anything like that. It's really nice. Not the fanciest thing, but it is nice. Very relaxing.
Yeah. All right. Well, for time's sake, we're going to go ahead and take our next break. And when we come back, we're going to get into Thoughtful Thursday. Today's topic comes from NPR News. Why are so many Americans quitting their jobs? We're going to be talking about the Great Resignation today on Thoughtful Thursday. So stick around. You're listening to the Right Morning Show on WWSU 106.9 FM. Welcome back to the Right Morning Show on WWSU 106.9 FM. For a thoughtful Thursday today, we're going to be talking about why are so many Americans quitting their jobs. And this comes from NPR.org. Goodbye, farewell, adios, sayonara. Workers have been giving their bosses an earful of such words as of late. Last week, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics announced that 4.3 million Americans, or 2.9% of the entire workforce, quit their jobs in August. That was a record breaking month, piggybacking on previous record months. The Great Resignation is real, and it can be seen across virtually all industries. It's common to see a surge in quitting when the job market is tight and there's a cornucopia of open positions. But what's happening now is unlike anything we've seen before. Economists and pollsters are still investigating what's going on. Are generous government benefits encouraging people to quit? Maybe, but some evidence is suggesting not. Are people angling for a raise after decades of stagnant pay? Probably, yeah. The family pressures imposed by closed schools, the closing and reopening of businesses, the reshuffling of the population to different locations and industries, and the fear of the virus as face to face settings have all also almost certainly played a role. But the historic rise in quitting also seems to be about more than all of this. In a new working paper, the UC Berkeley economist Ulrich Malmendier suggests that something existential exists behind the Great Resignation. The pandemic and the rise of remote work have changed the way we view our lives and the world. The idea that our experiences shape our choices is hardly radical, and Malmendier is not alone in among scholars suggesting that soul searching during the pandemic helps explain the surge in quitting. Texas A&M psychologist Anthony Klotz, who predicted and coined the term the Great Resignation back in May, credits pandemic epiphanies with motivating many workers to depart their jobs for greener pastures. But experience effects, as Malmendier calls them, remain remarkably underinvestigated in economics, which tends to be more focused on the cold material incentives that influence our behavior. Malmendier has been working to change that. Malmendier says her journey to unlocking the mysteries of how personal and collective experiences shape our economic choices began when she was thinking about her home. Malmendier's from Germany, and she says the moors of her home country inspired her to investigate the idea that experiences can dramatically affect people's economic decisions. The Germany she grew up in and now watches from afar is one that is hypervigilant about inflation. Whether it's in the Bundesbank, the central bank, the Bundestag, the legislator, or the Bundeskanzlerin, the equivalent of the White House, German leaders tend to be inflation hawks, flocking toward tight money, balanced budget, and price stability. These policy preferences have at times pitted Germany against other EU nations when they have negotiated their shared monetary policy at the European Central Bank. A little over a decade ago, Malmendier was on the faculty of the Stanford Business School with Stefan Nagel, who is also from Germany. And we were talking about why we Germans are so obsessed with inflation, she says. The answer was kind of obvious to them, given their knowledge of their country's history. If there's one nation that has exemplified the perils of inflation, it's Germany. After losing World War I, Germany struggled with the burdens imposed by the Treaty of Versailles, which forced the nation to pay reparations for the war and hobbled some of its main industries. The Weimar Republic dealt with its financial problems through deficit spending and printing lots of money, and inflation took off. Prices quadrupled every month on average for almost a year and a half between 1922 and 1923. Historians blame the skyrocketing prices for destabilizing the dramatically elected government and facilitating the rise of the Nazi Party. And in short, it didn't end well. We wondered whether the hyperinflation experience in the early 20th century was transmitted through generations, shaping us in a long lasting manner, Malmadir says. It led Malmadir and Nagel down a path to research how past experiences can influence people's economic behavior and attitudes. And I apologize, I believe it's pronounced Nagel, not Nagel. Malmadir and Nagel's first influential paper in the area was titled Depression Babies: Do Macroeconomic Experiences Affect Risk Taking? They wanted to know whether those who grew up in the aftermath of the stock market crash of 1929 were less likely to invest in the stock market. They found the answer was a resounding yes. The Great Depression, they found, created an entire generation that was skittish about investing in stocks. Those who came of age in the roaring 50s and 60s, in contrast, were much more gung-ho about it. In a new working paper, Malmadir sketches out a prototype of how we should think about the ways in which personal and generational experiences can systematically affect our economic behavior. She reviews the literature and finds patterns. Economic calamities like hyperinflation, stock market crashes, and unemployment spikes tend to affect people's attitudes and choices for a long time. But people are particularly reactive to what happened recently. These experience effects tend to be domain specific, she says. So a stock market crash doesn't seem to affect, for example, people's purchases of bonds. Malmadir cites research from neuroscience, which he says finds that our experiences almost literally rewire our brains. Evidence on neuroplasticity reveals that personal experiences and learning after the strength of neural connections and fine-tune the brain structure to those of past experiences, she writes. Learning alter the strength of neural connections and fine-tune the brain structure to those past experiences. It's known in the field as use-dependent brain development. Research shows that this is especially true for kids. Childhood trauma, for instance, can profoundly affect people's outcomes as adults. This includes putting them at great risk of substance abuse, criminal and antisocial behavior, depression, dropping out of school, and chronic health problems. One recent study found this laundry list of problems includes greater financial strain. In short, experiences, whether personal or collective, seem highly relevant when studying inequality, poverty, and the economy. And as for the effects of the pandemic, Malmadir predicts that the legacy of forced teleworking, homeschooling, and other dramatic social and economic changes will continue to shape our choices long after the viral danger recedes. At the very least, there will certainly be many of us working new jobs. Laughing Chipmunk, what are your thoughts on the Great Resignation?
Well, I just figure, if people really want to quit their jobs, that's their choice. They have to live with that choice. But it does mean that, more jobs will be opening up for other people that are actually actively looking for jobs. Such in the case of your stepbrother, he found a job pretty quickly, to our surprise.
Hopefully
So,
it pays decently.
say what?
Hopefully it pays decently.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Because, during this Great Resignation, a lot of people have complained that they've quit their jobs because of being underpaid. Like, for instance, there would be entry-level positions that would require a master's degree, 4 years experience in 2 different fields, and still only pay you $12 an hour starting. And I could see why people are quitting their jobs over that.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Like, sure, the
But
federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's keeping up with inflation. P.S. It's not.
right. Yeah, yeah, you got to make a living.
In a lot of places, you need $20 an hour to live comfortably, at least.
Yeah.
California is the California and a couple other states are the exception. You need like $34 an hour to live comfortably out there.
Gee whiz.
All right. Well, that concludes the Right Morning Show. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up the show today. The final check of the weather, cloudy and 51 degrees here at Wright State University. We got some rain that's going to come in today. And unfortunately, it's going to stay with us through Saturday. So be sure to bring your umbrella. Coming up next on WWSU Radio from 10 to 11 a.m. is the Democracy Now! Podcast with Amy Goodman and Juan Gonzalez. Get the latest current events and special guest interviews on their show. We have Shane Neal and Parker Testa are bringing back their summer show just for one episode. Testa and Neal keep it real today from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. They're going to be broadcasting live from the hangar, and they're going to be doing a special Halloween candy tier list. So you don't want to miss that. From 3 to 4 p.m. today, we have Sage Calhoun from Vibe Check. Tune in to listen to a variety of different music. From 5 to 6 p.m. or 5 to 5:45 p.m., we have the Raider Sports Podcast. I'm sorry, 4:45 to 5:45 p.m. Raider Sports Podcast today. It was rescheduled because at 5:45 p.m. we have women's volleyball. So be sure to tune in for that. And then from 8 to 9 p.m. we have the Wicked Hour. Listen to some spooky and scary stories to get yourself in the mood for Halloween this weekend. Don't forget the Halloween Bash this Saturday, 6 p.m. to 1 a.m. in the Student Union. You don't want to miss it. There's going to be a lot of fun activities and even a band that's going to be performing. So thank you, Lathic Chimuk, for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Friar Pat.
And everybody, thank you for tuning in. We're here every Tuesday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. on WWSU 106.9 FM. Have a great day.